What's going on, everybody? Ab the Audicrat here, and we're back again with another beat breakdown video. This is episode 5 from my latest single, Shake Shack. Whenever I'm preparing these beat breakdown videos, I go into the session and clean it up a bit, make sure everything's named properly, make sure there's no tracks that are unused that are kind of in the way, and disable any plugins that I'm not using, get rid of those, to make it more visually appealing for the video and just for me to be able to navigate the session better. And for this session, I was a bit surprised actually on how little processing there is, and that's a little unlike my mixes. I'm usually adding distortion, definitely delay and reverb to certain aspects of the beat. So let's start from the top with the beat itself. When I was making this beat originally, I was really liking how the drums were coming out. Just sounds like a real drum kit, a lot of flam going on, real dry, crisp sound. Let's hear it solo real quick. Like I was saying before, not a whole lot of processing on really anything on this track individually. I have the drums going through the virtual mix bus from Slate, some compression in the FG 116, which is basically an 1176 remodel by Slate. I didn't do anything with this EQ. I didn't even trim anything going in and out. Not a lot going on there. The kick, the snare, the hi-hat, the open hat. I got a couple snares layered. Not a whole lot either. Some EQing on, this is the kick. A few dB of reduction on the snare at 4K, something similar, about 5 or 6, a dB or 2 of reduction for the open hat, similar with the hi-hat with a roll-off on the bottom. I think this might be the flam. Something similar too, like a lot of the sounds were a little too bright, a little too snappy. More times than none, you'd be surprised how much top-down processing really gets the job done in a way that will save you time and energy, mental energy. If you could just hear the drums in this case and just see that the whole drum kit, every sound is just too hot in 4 to 6K, go to the drum bus and just take it down there. I wouldn't really spend too much time doing that with each sound unless you could really tell that one sound is standing out with a certain frequency. Let's say the kick was just really hot on 4 to 6K, but you really like the low end, but you could hear it specifically the kick, then go to the kick and make that dip. Maybe you're going to use some dynamic controls. Again, I'm using F6 for all of this at all times. It's really good on drum sounds. I would give it a try and solo your drum kit as a whole, and if there's a lot of sounds going on and it's just really bright, really hot, 4 to 6, even like 2 to 6. Try doing a dip, maybe even use some dynamic controls and just tame it. Give it a decent amount of reduction, 2 to 3 dB, maybe more. Top-down processing can really help you, can get you the same results, maybe even better results. Before we go over the sample, if you're a Mimic user and you put samples in there to chop up, I found there to be some issues where if you're loading an MP3 directly dragging and dropping into the Mimic device itself, there tends to be some issues with saving. Specifically, when you close a track, even if you save it and then you go back in, the chops in Mimic won't be there. Even if you're dragging and dropping a wave. I did contact support at one point and they suggested, look, drag your file into the session itself, bounce it to audio in the sequencer, then from the browser, drag it as a wave into Mimic. I have found that that does work, although I did run into some issues with the chops in Mimic. Once I updated Reason, a few times it did get rid of them then, but much better results when you do that. So when you're chopping samples in Reason, specifically Mimic, take the file, drag and drop it in the sequencer or load it within the browser, bounce it to audio within the sequencer, bounce it to the browser, and then drag and drop that into Mimic if you want to chop samples up. In the timeline here, you can see that I grayed out, basically disabled the Mimic chops. This is a time where I took the sample, chopped it up, then bounced it to audio. And what prompted me to start doing this was because of some of the issues I was having with Mimic not saving the chops. But at the end of the day, bouncing to audio is almost always the best thing to do. So as you can see, the Mimic device here, there are no chops. The chops that I made are not there anymore, which can also be a pain because to have to go back and chop everything, you might not have chopped it exactly the same way, and it just takes some time to get the chops perfect. I still kept it in the device and the chops are still there in case I do want to go back, rearrange something. More than likely that will not happen, but I saved them either way. Let's solo the sample. I didn't realize when I was chopping this too that there's some gaps here. Sometimes I do leave gaps between sample chops because it gives it like a certain effect or just like a little bit of a drop. Even if it's for a very short period, it can kind of sound cool. The processing on the sample didn't do a whole lot on this either. So you can see right around 3K using the dynamic controls of F6 and just taming that when that's getting a little too hot. This EQ is far more static. I do have some dynamic controls happening at about 1600 hertz. Dip at 500, dip at about 4K. And that is it for processing on the sample. Taking a peek at the mixer, I did not use a single send on this track. Again, I don't know how that happened, but the beat sounded dope, and sometimes I don't ask questions, I just go with it. The bass on this track is pretty straightforward, just complementing the melody of the beat. I'll play that in solo. Might be hard to hear this one, but I'll play it in solo anyway. It does have some saturation on the 808 itself, so when I loaded the sample, I didn't have to do too much. Just kind of sounded good as is. A few things I did do is throw a track spacer on here for when the kick hits, just taming the bass. And then I have the classic H comp from Waves, just giving the bass a nice squash. Mixing bass can be tricky. Perceived loudness is a big thing. There could be some notes that sound loud and cut through the mix, but there's not a lot of bass going on with them. Or vice versa, the sub frequencies could be bumping, and then if it gets up a little bit higher, it just barely cuts through the mix. What I do a lot of the time is make sure that there's quite a bit of reduction, about 6 dB, sometimes more. I do have track spacer really taking care of the attack for the most part, but it doesn't hurt to add a little bit more with the compressor. Okay, mix bus processing on this. I have an Infinity EQ rolling off about 30 hertz and under, just getting rid of that rumble, making sure it's not affecting further plugins in the chain on the mix bus. Virtual mix rack is next. I have a virtual mix bus. I add this to pretty much every mix bus, giving it some saturation. I have it on the Brit 4K E setting, a little bit of drive. I also have another saturation unit on this, pulling back the mix to just under 50 on that, giving a little bit of thickness on the Revival module. Also love this one a lot. And on the custom series, really pulling back the 4K here. I try to make sure the mix is balanced enough where I don't have to do that too much. And then a slight boost at 100. And next up, we have the FG Red from Slate Digital, fantastic bus compressor. Just taking a little bit off the top, not even a dB. I think at some points it might hit a dB of gain reduction. This also gives some nice saturation as well. So the kick doesn't even hit a dB reduction. It's really the snare that's doing that. Just tightens it up a little bit. After that, I have the Kramer tape from Waves. I like this plugin too. It's on the default preset, Wow and Flutter at 12 o'clock. I try not to go too heavy on this, especially on the mix bus. I really like just the default preset on this. Sometimes I'll start cranking the record level, which also pulls back on the playback level if you link it. Again, just more saturation, a little bit more compression. This one, I just kind of left this one as is, pulled back the noise. Of course, I have it going into the Mo TT from Slate Digital, about 50% dry wet, hip hop setting, pulling back the high end to about 45. That's usually my sweet spot. Really depends on the track, but for this one, that's what I use. Like I said in my last video, I have ozone on this like I do for pretty much all my beats, but for the beat videos, it introduces a lot of latency for when I'm playing and stopping, or if I'm actually hitting some notes on the keyboard. So I throw an L2 on here from Waves just to bring the level back up, making it sound nice and full. And that's going to do it for episode 5 of my beat breakdown series for the single Shake Shack. If you haven't had the chance to yet, be sure to check out my website, www.abtheaudicrat.com. On the homepage, all the way at the bottom, if you're interested, you can also sign up for my monthly newsletter, a brief recap of the month before, all my releases, some YouTube videos, all the good stuff. We're going to send it out with a full beat. Thanks for stopping by again. Peace.